Welcome, children of all ages, to this wonderful resting time.
Hi, good day. This is Dr. Roxanne Dalio talking to you from Mind Works for Children, helping children help themselves, body, mind, and spirit. Today we are really excited to have with us a wonderful friend and creative colleague, Josuha Leeds. I want to tell you a little bit about Josuha Leeds. Josuha is a music producer, an educator, and sound researcher. He is one of the few published authorities in the exciting new field of psychoacoustics, which is the study of the effects of music and sound on the human nervous system. Did you know that sound and music are nutrients for the nervous system? They are, and his work since 1991 has been published in numerous magazines and articles and books focusing on the therapeutic applications of music and sound. Josuha also conducts seminars internationally for music, healthcare, and education professionals. I'd like to welcome today Josuha Leeds as he explains to us the power of sound as it affects the whole body in focusing and healing. Josuha, thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Dr. Roxanne, it is my pleasure and my privilege.
Awesome. Josuha, I'd like to begin by having you talk to us a little bit about the subject of psychoacoustics. What is it exactly, and how does it work in the context of healing both the individual and the environment?
That's a great question. Psychoacoustics is a funny term. Many people are a little bit put off by the term because of the word psycho in there. Alfred Hitchcock really did a fantastic job in making the film Psycho, but he really ruined a great title in terms of the term psychoacoustics. And so what I'd like to do is debunk anybody's concern about what this term psycho actually refers to. It comes from the Latin or Greek term psyche, which actually has to do with mind and spirit. The term psychoacoustics is actually the study of the perception of sound, and this includes how we listen, our psychological responses to what it is that we're hearing, and the physiological impact of music and sound on the human nervous system. In other words, psychoacoustics is really the study of how sound affects us. And of course, as somebody who's always been interested in the deepest elements of music and why it is that music holds such a central place throughout time, regardless of boundaries, on this planet, what it is about music that causes us to have such a loving, enduring reaction to it. And so when I began my exploration of that, then there really was actually no better term to be able to describe that study than the field of psychoacoustics.
Exactly. It makes much more sense, and thank you for reframing that word and giving us a much richer and more accurate description. It really incorporates mind and spirit. I love that. And it is the study of the perception of sound, how we are actually making meaning to what we hear. It seems that in one of my favorite books that you've written, and I know you have 3, and we're going to announce the 3rd one soon, The Power of Sound, you've said that sound has the power to stimulate, relax, and change behavior patterns. I wanted to get the listeners to have an appreciation for this pretty much up front in our program, and I was hoping that the first thing that you could do would be to give us a little bit more information about what are the basic ingredients and why is it that they are so effective?
That's a great question, and perhaps before I go into the primary ingredients that I, over a couple of decades now of inspection and inquiry into why and what it is that makes sound affect the primary pulse systems of the human nervous system, being brain waves, heart rate, and breath, I'd like to just also allude to the fact that when we're really talking about acoustics, which is really the study of sound, and so therefore psychoacoustics is the study of sound and its effect on the human psyche. But the fact of the matter is that when we think about acoustics, which is the study of sound itself, there are multiple dimensions in which we can actually be aware that it exists and is being fully studied and passionately studied around the world.
Tell us more. What do you mean?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Tell us a little more about that. What do you mean about that?
Well, what I mean about that is that in addition to psychoacoustics, which is the study of the effect of music and sound on the human nervous system, there is also a field called bioacoustics. And bioacoustics is the study of the ways that animals use sound to be able to communicate amongst themselves, how they create that sound, and also the study of the effect of the human soundscape or noise upon the animal kingdom. There is also a field called vibroacoustics, which is the direct application of vibration and frequency upon specific areas of the body. In addition to that, there's a field that is a very new field, but one that has really caught my interest, and that's called agroacoustics. And as interesting and strange as that sounds, you have heard it correctly, agra as in agriculture.
Yes.
In which they have found that it is possible that certain frequencies, certain vibrations will have the effect on the growth rate of agriculture and on plants.
Wow. So in a way, let's recap, because the simple question I opened up our session with was, what is psychoacoustics and how does it work in the context of healing both the individual and the environment? And it seems like you've really encompassed a much broader perspective or viewpoint than I had anticipated you're going into by including bioacoustics, vibroacoustics, and agroacoustics. So if you wanted to just speak more directly about how soundscape affects our environment, what might you share with the listeners that are the, let's say, the guidelines or helpful ways of using sound for our environment?
Again, a great question, and to just give a very, very fast crash course in terms of understanding this nature of sound and why it is that sound has such a profound effect, it's important to understand that when we're talking about sound, we're really ultimately talking about frequency, and frequency is the measurement of vibration. So we're really talking about vibration, and if we're talking about vibration, then we're really talking about atomic material. In other words, anything that is made up of atomic material, which comprises just about everything on our planet.
Right.
Everything that is made up of atomic material is moving. The atoms moving, the movement of the atoms, the movement of the electrons around the nucleus of an atom, create a vibration, and anything that has a periodic movement, such as in a vibration, is actually creating a sound. That whether or not we can hear that sound or not within our limited range of hearing, it all is creating a sound, and frequency is the measurement of sound. And so consequently, when we're talking about music, really it's an interchangeable phrase, because when we're talking about sound, what we're really talking about is frequency. And when we're talking about frequency, we're really talking about vibration.
Right.
And so consequently, that means that as we have gone from now the broad or the macro now into the micro to finally get to answering your very simple question, which is, what are the elements in sound that have the primary effect upon the human nervous system, then it's just as important to understand that there are these aspects of sound that really go down into the understanding why it is that sound affects everybody, because sound is a universal principle.
And now we know it affects everything.
Meaning
the creatures, right? Even these four-leggeds and the wingeds and the fish in the sea.
That's correct.
And now it's even going down to a micro level of the agriculture, these small seedlings. I can't even imagine. I mean, the depth and breadth of this is just mind-boggling, and it's so awesome that you're involved in such a beautiful way of studying sound and really bringing to our consciousness a higher level of knowledge and appreciation for just how broad-reaching sound, in this case frequency, which creates vibration on the subatomic level, does move us on so many levels.
That's it. Now, the interesting journey, listen, I was a rock and roller. I've been a musician all of my life. I mean, I'm somebody who started playing music and manipulating sound waves when I was at the age of 7, many years ago. And as I have begun my study into psychoacoustics over these last decades, then to me what I came to realize was that it was really inappropriate to call myself a musician anymore. Really, I had become a soundician, so to speak. And then when I thought about that, then the truth of the matter is that it's not that I was so interested in understanding sound, but I was like a sculptor who wants to understand what is the element from which they create. What does a sculptor create from? They're creating from clay or from the earth or from different elements, whether or not it's metal or whatever it happens to be. Well, for me as a dedicated musician who was interested in what were the most extraordinary elements inside of the musical notes, then digging down into the bedrock, all of a sudden I'm going, it isn't even about sound anymore. It's really about understanding how do we harness frequency? How do we harness vibration? How do we essentially harness the power of atomic structure that then in its final result from an auditory vantage point comes out in the most beautiful manifestation being music?
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Which is a nice segue into the first clip that I know you have set up for us from your Essential Sound series. Will you tell us a little bit about that, Joshua?
Yes, I'll be more than glad to do that. When we're talking about sound, we're really talking about what is the tone, what is the rhythm, and what is the pattern identification. In other words, what is it that really causes our nervous system, the auditory pathways and the auditory areas within the neocortex of the brain to either tune in with a great deal of alertness or to basically identify what the sound is and then to be able to take it from what we call active listening and go into something that we now refer to as passive hearing. And in the process of looking to create the most meaningful and easily assimilable music for people who have already got some kind of a stressed nervous system, an overwhelmed nervous system, whereby their tolerances to sensory data become diminished because of either age or stress.
Yes.
Then I began to identify what were the elements that would be most easily assimilated. Just in the same way as in food, because as you mentioned earlier, we look at sound now from the vantage point as being a nutrient for the nervous system. How is it that we can take in a very sober level what it is that we need at any given point in time? Do we need to charge the nervous system? Do we need to discharge? Do we need to arouse the nervous system or stimulate the nervous system, or do we need to be taking the nervous system down into a level of great relaxation and being soothed? And from that process, I began an exploration which now takes place in something called the Essential Sound series, which embodies the last 5 years of my work. And in the Essential Sound series, I move, and I've created an archive of 8 hours of recordings that run the spectrum from the slowest and the most simple of sound, are in the guise of music, to fast and very complex music, with the idea of saying where is it within this spectrum from simple to complex, from slow to fast, that will create the environment, the auditory environment that is conducive to a specific activity. And so I'd like to right now begin by playing a clip here from the Essential Sound series, and this is a piece from Bach, Bach that is, and I'm just pulling it up right now.
Okay.
Happens to be the Bach Prelude in C major from the Well-Tempered Clavichord, Book 1, Number 1. This is the piece as it was originally written by Bach, and I'll play a little bit of it, and then we will play an example of what we have done with this music in order to make it so it is most conducive to a relaxed nervous system.
Okay.
All right, and so this is the Bach Prelude in C major in its original version.
Okay. We can certainly appreciate the beauty of that piece, Joshua.
Absolutely, and this piece played by my co-collaborator Lisa Spector, a wonderful Juilliard graduate and concert pianist. It is a humbling experience to approach something that is so perfect, to then say, how is it that we would then take that gorgeous example of the best of music and musical composition.
Yes.
And how would we take that and create a piece that's somehow used in a little bit of a different way than Bach perhaps was writing that?
Yes.
Even back hundreds of years ago, these guys were aware of the fact of how this music was affecting people, whether or not it happened to be in church, which was one of the venues where many of the people, and especially Bach, his salary, his bread and butter, was paid for by the church. He was hired to be a church composer. And so he was aware of the fact when he was writing music that got too slow that he needed to write music that would speed it up and enhance the nervous system so that people weren't falling asleep in Sunday church services.
Exactly.
And very possibly that piece of music, in its fast version, was designed to be able to keep people awake so that when he got into slower music to be able to help them to find a connection into a higher power, that they were able to do that without be snoring. But what we did with this piece of music, and I'm going to now play another variation, a rearrangement of this music that I did, whereby I didn't change a note in this music. I wouldn't attempt to ever add any notes to what has already been done by this master. But what I do is I will often, if necessary, I'll rearrange the music so that it will be a little bit more conducive and a little bit easier in this instance upon the nervous system. And so I'm going to now play the exact same piece of music, the Bach Prelude in C major, Book 1, Number 1, that has been rearranged. And after it's done, I'll explain what it is that I did. Dr. Roxanne, what I did with this piece of music was in the original version that we played just before this. It was much faster.
Yes.
And it was higher in timbre.
Mm-hmm.
It was also played in an arpeggio, which meant that it was individual notes of the chord going up and down. And so there was a lot of action going on. There was a lot of complexity, and there was a lot of auditory data for the nervous system to have to interpret. You know, the nervous system is basically analyzing everything that's coming in through the eardrum. Mm-hmm. And so whether or not it has to be with tempo, or whether or not it has to be with interval or counterpoint or arrangement or differences in timbre of the instruments and the different instruments, the harmony between them, all of these different elements are going on at the exact same time. And so it takes a lot of processing power. In this piece, what I did is I slowed it down, and I asked Lisa to play this music instead of in an arpeggiated version. I asked her to play it as block chords. And what that means is that instead of it being bum 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 bum, it was just one chord. Bum 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 bum. The difference between that is that the nervous system did not have to exert the energy to be able to go, oh, I see the difference between these notes going bop, 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 bop. Instead, it was just one chord instead of the different elements of it. And I wonder whether or not you and your listeners, or I would wager a bet, actually, based on my testing and my experience with this music and the feedback that I've gotten from clinics and classrooms all around the world, that literally within the first 10 to 20 seconds, the entire nervous system begins to slow down. And so then the question becomes, well, why is that? That by taking something and slowing it down, lowering the octave of it, and simplifying the delivery of the sound, why is it that it would begin to then have an effect on the nervous system?
Okay.
Okay, now, that brings us into basically the three primary elements that I have come to understand make a difference in terms of our primary pulse systems, again being our brain waves, our heart rate, and our breath. And those three areas, which you were beginning to ask me about way back before I got wound up and took us out to the far reaches of Mars and back, those elements are really what I call the primary components of psychoacoustic music, and they are resonance and entrainment and pattern identification. And all three of those elements were put into play in the rearrangement of this beautiful Bach prelude. Resonance is about tone, and it's about high tones and about low tones, and it's about the effect of one tone on another, meaning the effect of one frequency range having an ability to change another. So that hypothetically, if I were to say, Roxanne, if we were in the same room, which I wish we were, but we're not, but I'll imagine that we were, and if I were to say, will you hold this violin here in your lap? Don't play it, don't touch the strings. And I'm going to now take another violin and I'm going to stand on the complete other side of the room, 20 or 30 feet away, and I'm going to play an open D string. And how the violin that is sitting in your lap, that exact same string would start to vibrate, even though you haven't touched it. This is an example of resonance. Resonance means the ability of one vibration to change another vibration. And in this instance, my playing of that D string on the violin would be causing your D string on the unplayed violin to start to vibrate in a way that also takes place even with people and takes place in many, many different dimensions, whether or not it's something like the cement in an airport and the vibration of the jet engines causing the cement, the structures in the airport to either break down or to stay solid, or soldiers that are marching in lockstep and marching across a bridge, and the vibration of their footsteps causing the bridge to actually dissemble and fall apart. Or the way that the resonance of even, believe it or not, people within the same housing structure, like a dormitory or a sorority within a college structure where there are lots of women, and the menstruation rate within that context having an effect because of so many women in such a small place, and literally the vibration on the minutest atomic structure of that physiological level having an effect. You can see that across the boards, the ability of resonance of one vibration having the ability to affect the vibration of another and to speed it up or to slow it down takes place. And so we know that when we play music of a high tone, it has the effect of changing the vibration within the nervous system of the listener, and we know that high tones tend to charge the nervous system, and low tones tend to discharge or to slow down the nervous system.
So Joshua, let's talk about this in relation to how the vibration or high frequency, low frequency relates to emotions and the use of music to improve mood or to reduce pain, and get into the more practical applications of this ever so brilliant work that you've spent so much time to really shed light on, so that we can appreciate the variance, the nuances, and also the power of sound, for sure.
That's a great question, and in order for me to be able to answer this, I want to add in this one substrate of resonance, which is called entrainment. Mm-hmm. And entrainment is basically how external periodic rhythms cause our primary pulse systems, the brain waves, the heart rate, or the breath, to speed up or to slow down. And when we put together tone or resonance and rhythm or entrainment, when we put together tone and tempo, then it creates a very, very strong indicator of why it is that music, through the centuries, has had the impact on people, and it's used in virtually every ceremony, whether or not it happens to be birth or all the way to the other end of the spectrum, whether or not it happens to be in dying. That tone and tempo has been a part of that for thousands of years, long before we had MRIs to be able to study what's taking place in the brain, to be able to verify what it is that cultures have known forever. Mm-hmm. And so consequently, when you then say, well, how is it that we apply that? How is it that we find that these things have an effect on the nervous system? Then we can look through and we can see that music and sound currently is being used, whether or not it's in birthing and in the process of being able to help to relax the mother's nervous system, or taking it all the way to the work of Therese Schroeder-Schieker and her extraordinary work in The Chalice of Repose, where they use music to be able to help, quote-unquote, unbind the physical body from the spirit, to be able to let go of the spirit, literally to be untethering, to be unbinding, so that there is a process of more of an easeful transition. This is all based in either one of these instances following the full panoply of possibility, from birthing to dying, the fact of being able to use certain rhythms and use certain timbres, certain tonalities, to be able to either arouse or to be able to soothe the nervous system. In a work that is very, or an area of this that is very close to the work that you so brilliantly do, Dr. Roxanne, in terms of your Mind Works for Children and your work with guided imagery, there is a particular study that I came across when I was writing The Power of Sound that I think bears reference here. May I do that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. What was found in 1996 in a study that was conducted at the University of Miami, it was entitled The Effect of Selected Classical Music and Spontaneous Imagery on Plasma B Endorphin. Well, that's a pretty fancy concept, but the bottom line is that what they were able to find in working with over 200 women who were in stages of labor, researchers found that those who listened to music over a 24-hour period demonstrated significantly lowered plasma levels of two different endorphins, two hormones released during stressful events. And what they found was that imagery has been shown to affect a wide range of physiological functions, including blood pressure, respiration, peripheral blood flow, muscle tension, white blood cell count, thyroid secretion, blood sugar level, and it just goes on, including brainwave patterns and immune function. What they found out was that the use of imagery, meaning the use of story, the use of metaphor, the use of words that paint a picture that people can listen to, in this case, while they were in different stages of labor, had an extraordinary effect upon easing the stress and creating deep levels of relaxation. But to take it a step further, which is the work that you do, and that you do so brilliantly, and why I've been so delighted to be in association with you, Dr. Dalio, and your work with MindWorks for Children.
Thank you, Joshua.
You're so welcome, and it's just a privilege to be putting our heads together in terms of what it is that I know about psychoacoustics and what it is that you know about guided imagery, and to be able to find ways to be able to take it many steps further. And what this study found that I found to be so exciting, and why I quoted it in The Power of Sound, was that music imagery and imagery together were tested for their effects. And that what they found was that when they played just music, or when they used just imagery without any music, or when they used music and imagery together, that of those three possibilities, the music and the imagery together had a much stronger effect than did either music by itself, or silence, or imagery by itself. That something about putting together music with imagery creates a much deeper emotional context within the nervous system that allows us to be able to then go into a much more conducive environment for what it is that the therapeutic professional is looking to accomplish. And I'm sure that you have found this out yourself over and over. That's why you've created these extraordinary recordings that you have.
Thank you, Joshua, which gives us a segue into a momentary station break that we have to do here. So stand by as I just say, for those of you who are just tuning in, we are listening to the work of Joshua Leeds, a leading music producer, educator, and sound researcher, who is giving us a rather in-depth look at why sound and music is so powerful and healing. And in the many venues that he has investigated, we noticed that the instruments for using sound in various institutions cover the gamut of helping women who are birthing babies, music for thanatology, which is the help with people who are in hospice care and passing. It's been used to assist in surgery, of course, and in a variety of psychotherapeutic challenging aspects to human health and development. You're listening to MindWorks for Children. This is Dr. Roxanne Dalio, helping children help themselves, body, mind, and spirit. If any of you have any interest in calling in, please do. We would love to know what it is that you would like to know about this very important subject, sound and music, as they do affect the nervous system and our mental and physical health. In fact, Joshua has been very extensively explaining to us how these sonic tools empower health, learning, and productivity. In particular, we're going to be talking now about why musicians are trained in a 2-year program, a graduate-level program, where they wear beepers and stethoscopes as tools of their trade. And this is happening, as you mentioned, Joshua, at the Chalice of Repose in Montana. Tell us why musicians are actually carrying around beepers and stethoscopes?
Well, this was a program that was created by a very dear and beloved colleague, Therese Schroeder-Schieker. And actually, the program now has moved from Montana to Oregon. And anybody that is interested in being able to research this, they could do a Google search or do some kind of a search online and enter in Chalice, CHALICE, of repose, REPOSE, and you will find the appropriate contact information. But what Therese found as a musician was, as she was beginning to do hospice work, was that when she played music, that certain kinds of music had a certain effect and other kinds of music had a different effect, and that began what has become a lifelong study for her on how it is that she can take the use, the very prescriptive use of music, and be able to train people to be able to take vital signs, to be able to read a hospital chart, to be literally housed in hospitals right next door to the palliative care units, whereby they would be available to doctors and nurses, so that when somebody who was in final stages of life was moving towards their transition, there would be times where instead of the administration of drugs, which in and of themselves are a frequency, that instead they could use the frequencies of sound. And Therese has an extraordinary postgraduate program that is highly respected internationally, and whereby people are trained to be able to work within a hospital setting and to be on call and to be able to come into a room and to be able to create the appropriate sound environment that is conducive for both not only the patient but also the family members that are there to be able to ease in the process of transition.
Beautiful, beautiful. That is a very unique application, and I realize that for some of us who have been in the field of health for quite some time have experienced it and the effects it has on not only the patient but the family as well. But there's still a wide group of the population that really has no baseline experience of the various methods and ways that this kind of awareness of music and its power is being applied to many aspects of our lives. And as I ask you to talk about the advanced sound techniques, the prescriptive sound, as you defined it, as you did so beautifully about the use of guided imagery and music, as the researchers have combined the effects of these two aspects to actually measure the improvement of people who have had long, extensive bouts of depression or anger, or really even if they just were using the music to evoke changes in their emotions, that there is a very direct and immediate effect that it can have, and we can direct not only ourselves in using and choosing and selecting certain passages of music or guided imagery recordings for ourselves to either feel more uplift and more joy, or to perhaps bring us up from sadness and just the doldrums. And I think that in your work right now with Essential Sound series, there is the potential for every one of us to really be able to wield that application because of the fact that you have put it into these 8 hours of recording. And I wanted you to just tell us a little bit about how you designed those 8 hours so that people could really create the right kind of ambiance or environment, soundscape, as you called it.
Well, whether or not sound is being used in birthing or in dying, in dentistry, in surgery, in psychotherapy. The whole field, and it's really a burgeoning field, which I affectionately call sound work, because there are so many different facets of it. It is emerging into our culture as we have more and more research that is rolling down the pike. It's almost hard to keep track of it.
Yes.
And it is being used in the most simplest of ways, and it's being used in some of the most complex ways. And what I have been looking to do is find a way to be able to essentially create an archive of music that can be used by healthcare professionals or can be used by individuals, whereby we start to move out of the concept of, because a compact disc comes to us with 60 minutes or more of music on it, that we have to play the whole thing. To me, 5 minutes sometimes can absolutely do the trick. It can accomplish what it is that I'm looking to do with my nervous system. I'm a pretty holistically oriented guy. I eat a lot of organic food, and I'm interested in what are the elements that I put in on a sensory level into my nervous system. And I think that as we live these very fast-paced lives, we all are finding that it is very important for us to establish balance points, and whether or not that happens because something is a big red light on the dashboard whereby we start to have an upset within our balance structure on a physiological level or on an emotional level, or whether or not it's because we've been involved in some kind of an accident, we've had some kind of high-stress environment take place, a death, a divorce, whatever it happens to be. None of us get out of here without having to embrace on whatever level, whether or not we want to or not, the vicissitudes of life.
Yes.
And so the conclusion that I've come to is that basically, rather than popping a lot of pills and taking things that are going to have all kinds of different ramifications on the nervous system, that we're glad to have them when we need them, but there are ways for us to be able to essentially be able to regulate the sensory data that is coming in. And so I work specifically within the auditory concept of that. And the Essential Sound series, which, by the way, a great deal of information can be found on the website, essentialsoundseries.com, that the Essential Sound series is my first approach in terms of being able to create an archive of sound structures that move from the most simple to the most complex. And this is done through tempos and arrangement and orchestral density. In other words, is it light density? It's a lot easier for the nervous system to decipher what's taking place with one instrument, say a flute or a piano, than it is if there are multitudes of instruments and timbres, and the nervous system has to sort out the difference between what's going on in the horn section and the string section and what's going on with the woodwind section and the percussion section. It takes a lot more processing power.
Right.
And so my belief is that between tempo and arrangement and orchestral density and pattern identification, if we can just find and be able to go, boy, in the state of mind that I have this morning, I'm, for some reason, having a little bit of trouble being able to get a focus as I'm sitting in my office here, for an example. And what 5 minutes is going to allow me to be able to just be able to begin to focus in a well-concentrated manner?
This is a great question to ask, and actually I know a lot of moms who would want the answer to that for their children, so go right ahead and answer it, Joshua.
Yes, well, the difference is that we know that the ideal relaxed heart rate is between 50 and 70 beats per minute. And so I created a 2-CD set called Calm, and the purpose of that is to be able to have, whether or not it's for myself or it's for the mom next door, be able to say, my kid is so jacked up right now, it's so energetic, and that's wonderful, but what do I need to do, or what can the teacher do in the classroom to be able to create the ideal environment of body relaxed, mind alert? And so what I did was I created the archive whereby you pull down this 2-CD set, and there's either one CD that is piano only, or piano trios with piano and cello and oboe. And
so is this your next clip that you were going to share with us? Are we going to get a chance to taste this new delicious sound work that you're talking?
Yeah, you bet. With an information like that, how could I not do that? The difference is between whether or not we want music that is wonderfully slow and simple.
Yes.
And I'm going to play a piece right now by Debussy, and it's a beloved piece, Clair de Lune.
Right.
And I rearranged this so that it was just done with harp. And so let's take a short listen to this.
All righty.
Can hear with this music in the background is that it doesn't take a whole lot of attention to be able to process the sound of this music, even with my voice above it, because there is so much space in this music.
Right.
It's our processing power is not being used to the nth degree, just being able to decipher the difference between tone, tempo, and pattern.
Right. Tell us about that. Space outside, space inside, very important.
Right, and so consequently, this concept of using space in a way whereby we don't fill up every single ounce of space that would cause us to be in a situation where we have no room to be able to take in basically any other information, because it's taking all of our energy just to be able to decipher the amount of energy that's coming in. It's like you want to say, I'm too busy, I can't deal with anything else.
Exactly.
In other words, that's what puts us into what I call sensory overwhelm or sensory overload.
Yes.
Where there's just not enough processing power. And lots of times when you have children, for an example, even adults, who have got some kind of a neurodevelopmental issue that's taking place, if there's too much data, they go into overwhelm and they go into overload. And the truth is that this is not something that just takes place with a child or an adult with a neurodevelopmental issue. This is true for all of us, because the fact of the matter is that if we have 100 ergs of energy available to us, and 95% of them have already been used up just in processing the emails and the cell phones that are coming in, nonstop, and trying to do all that while we're driving at the same time, then at a given point, what happens is that we just run out. We don't have the extra energy to be able to even see that light is changing in front of us. No wonder why they're now making it so that it's illegal to be on the cell phone while It's a perfect example of sensory overload, too much data, where we're expecting the nervous system to be able to process it all. And so if we look at this piece of music, this beautiful, simple piece of this Debussy Clair de Lune, and we contrast that to another absolutely gorgeous piece of music, and I'm going to play the Bach. This is a flute sonata in C major allegro. You can see and you can sense. It's not even seeing. It's about just sensing the difference of what it takes to be able to process. So I'm going to now play a little bit of the Flute Sonata in C major.
All right. Wow, that's beautiful, Joshua. Can you imagine if we have a new kind of medicine cabinet for balancing the body energies that represents the Essential Sounds series, CDs, and then Bach flower remedies, and maybe echinacea thrown in there just for size, and having that be your first aid at any given time for either improving our mood or reducing pain? Wouldn't that be something?
Well, I think that you have beautifully articulated it. Really, what we're talking about is conscious awareness of sensory integration.
Yes. Yes, and our time is almost up, and so I did want to just see if I could summarize briefly three very important aspects of what it is that we've discussed and then turn it over to you. The three ideas that I'm really holding on to, which I've learned from you and I think are so valuable, are: one, sound and music are nutrients for our nervous system. Two, the auditory mechanism is a mega portal to the brain. Use it wisely. Three, sonic tools empower health, learning, and productivity. Have fun. Joshua, what would you like to say to our listening audience before we sign off for today? And we will have you back on. You've got way too much to say in a short brief of time here.
What I would like to say is that I think that you have, again, just beautifully articulated the primary concepts that I put forward, which is that music and sound can be used to enhance human function, and that if we use it with proper awareness, it becomes a very valuable tool for us to be able to create and maintain balance in our lives.
All right. You can find Joshua on his website, www.essentialsounds.com.
EssentialSoundsSeries.com.
EssentialSoundsSeries, thank you, .com. Tune in next week when we continue to have a lively conversation with yet another subject matter, bringing to you Mind Works for Children, helping children help themselves, body, mind, and spirit. Thank you ever so much. Blessings to you, my friend. Keep up the great work, Joshua.
Thank you, Roxanne. You too. A pleasure.
Thank you. Bye for now.